Hi, Wahida.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on Meaning of Life.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
oh, yes, it's a pleasure. Let me introduce us. I am Philip Menchaca, Project Coordinator at Union Theological Seminary, and you are Wahida Young, a Shirag in the Universal Sufi tradition. That's an ordained minister, leader of the Universal Worship Service, and also the volunteer coordinator at the Universal Sufi Community and Retreat Center, the Abode. So we are going to talk today about what Universal Sufism is and get into, I hope, some of the history of it and learn how you came to this practice. So to get started, we'll just start real simple.
Okay.
What is Universal Sufism? Can you give a quick summary of it?
I'll try. Sufism is a path. It's not a religion. It's a path, and it's a path of the heart. And it lives inside each one of us. There are probably many unspoken Sufis out there just because they are living from this place of divine truth that lives in all of us. And our invocation is toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the spirit of guidance. And the spirit of guidance is in each one of us. And when I first started working with the Sufi path, they talked about removing the veils, and I didn't know what that meant. What are the veils? Well, the veils are the things that cover our hearts and minds from being who we truly are, who keep us from knowing our essential truth. And often these veils have been given us as protection, and at some point they become obsolete. So as children we might develop defenses. Now we're going in the realm of psychology, but we develop patterns of behavior that as adults then don't serve us any longer, but can distort our behaviors and our interpretations of how we live our lives. And so this path is a way, the way that we work is a way of helping us gently reveal ourselves to ourselves so that we can become more fully who we truly are, who we're truly meant to be, fulfill our life's mission. And it's, of course, a life's work. It just keeps going.
Yeah. So there's two things there that I'd like to talk a little bit about. The first is, so this is not Sufism as is traditionally, or commonly, I should say, understood, where it's in Islamic practice or Islamic mystical practice. This is different. Is that correct?
It's different and it's the same. Probably the mystical path in any religion has an essential similarity because these truths are essential truths. Now, Sufism, if you look back as far as humanity, the beginning of humanity, Sufism existed in a sense because there were certain beings who had certain understandings, who had been given revealed truths in some way, and who were holding these understandings about what life is all about, and this divine connection or this sacred connection with the divine. that already existed. And then when Islam came along, it was there in that area and already Sufism. So it got incorporated into some of the areas of the Islamic world. And so we have Islamic Sufis in our order, people who practice Islam. And we have Jewish Sufis and Christian Sufis and Sufi Sufis. So you don't have to be practicing any other particular religion, but you also don't have to give it up.
And
so
the Universal Sufi conception of Sufism and mysticism in general is not tied to any one particular tradition. It's the idea that the mystical path, so to speak, is a foundational or inherent property of the world of life and the universe. Is that accurate?
That's a good way of putting it. Yes, because we believe in the unity of religious ideals, and all religions have ideals, and we believe in those ideals, as I said in the invocation: love, harmony, beauty, and how those can live in us. Now, Inayat Khan, the founder of our particular order, was from India, and he had studied many different religions, and then was, in a sense, sent to the West to bring the East and the West together. So he wanted to make the essential truths of this Sufi path, although he was a practitioner of Islam, Islamic Sufism, he wasn't so interested in promulgating that. He wanted to share the truths about life. And that's what, if you read his books or the compilations of his talks in the publications that we have, you see that he's talking about how to live your life. And that's the most important thing. And he had to learn about the Western mind and the Western culture so that he could transmit this message of how to again become more fully who we truly are. Okay, so
we've, I think, kind of answered the second point that I mentioned at the beginning, which is you'd said that, it's not a religion, it's a path. And if I'm correct, you said that because Universal Sufism, does it recognize the legitimacy of all religions as ways to get to deeper truths?
Absolutely. And that there's one shared divine source of truth, and it's been revealed to different prophets, masters, and saints through the years as the call of humanity found it was necessary. And then there would be people who were tuned and who were receptive to being able to share that message in their time. And so it's very much a living message.
And what is the end point of this path? I know in Islamic Sufism, it is talked about often like a path, a kind of spiritual journey, to use that term. And you see this in all throughout Sufi ideas, this metaphor of a path, like there's this famous Persian poem, The Conference of the Birds, which is this big metaphor about this journey that these birds take to come into union, or to meet this figure who is a God figure, is God. And so when you say that there's this path in Universal Sufism, that understanding, what is the endpoint? Is it as it is in Islamic Sufism, which is kind of a union with the divine, an understanding of one's own inherent connection to God?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so that would be the goal there.
Yes.
All right. And how did this end up coming to the West? You said Inyat Khan was sent here to the West. Did you mean that in a kind of literal sense, like someone sent him here, or did you mean it in he felt a calling to come spread his message to the West?
His teacher said that that's what he needed to do.
Okay.
So this order and all Sufi orders are lineages. There are lineage holders. There are people who have been given the transmission and or who have accepted the transmission and who carry that. So Inayat Khan was given the mission to carry the lineage through this is of the Chishti path, the Chishti order. But there's the Mevlevis. They're the ones who whirl and come from Rumi. They're Naqshbandis, they're Qadiris, they're Jarrahis. There are lots of different Sufi orders.
Okay.
And we're Chishtis. And in particular, Inayat Khan was a musician, and he was one of the finest musicians in India at the time. And he thought he would share this Sufi message through his music, but the West wasn't ready for that. They didn't know how to listen to Western music, but to Eastern music. But there was certainly an awakening going on at the beginning of the 20th century, where people were looking. There were the Theosophists, in particular, who were very interested in what he had to say, and many of them were some of his first followers.
Okay, so the Theosophists, this was a group of kind of, I'm not exactly sure the right, spiritualists, maybe you would say. There was Madame Blavatsky was a big figure here, and they borrowed from a bunch of different traditions and created the Theosophical Society, correct? And
That's right.
And I'm not to go too deep into it, but they also had this idea that there was a path or a journey that one went down as part of your spiritual practice. So speaking of the path that one goes along, what kind of practices do Universal Sufis do as spiritual development? You mentioned, I mean, you said that Inyat Khan was a musician. Does music play a big part in services or spiritual practice?
Well, let's see. Maybe I should back up a little bit and say that there are 5 prongs to our order, how we work, so that people can find the language or the way that works best for them. There is the kinship concentration, which is being in the world and being helpful to other people. There is the healing order. There are many teachings on healing. So there's some people that feel strongly drawn in that direction, and we have ceremonies and or rituals, not ceremonies, but rituals and teachings. There is the universal worship, which is the exoteric branch of the order. That's the branch that sort of reaches out to seekers of all religions, where we celebrate the service, and at the Abode we celebrate it every Sunday, and we can speak more about that later if you want. There is, and let's see, there is the esoteric school, which is an initiatic path, and that's where one takes what we call bayat, or takes initiation, and then one works with a guide, and one is given practices to do from one's personal guide. And that is how many of us work, but that's not for everyone. That's why it's nice to have the universal worship, which is this, again, unity of religious ideals, that we can all sit together and share our beliefs around themes, read scriptures and hear the voices, hear the music from different religions. So often in our services, we do what are called attunements to the religions. As, for example, before I'm going to read something from the Hindu religion, I might say, okay, let's chant a chant to Shiva, or calling on Rama, or calling on Ganesh. And we have lots of songs and chants that we all know, or we learn them as we go. And so we'll attune to the Hindu religion, and then we'll move to Buddhism, and then we'll chant something from the Buddhist path. Or sometimes we'll just listen to something. We'll listen to some, a CD or something like that, or someone will play some music. We have a lot of musicians who like to offer music. So music is a big part of our universal worship. But I wanted to speak also about zikr. And zikr is our chanting. And zikr means remembrance. And what we're remembering is the qualities of God that are in each one of us. And so we chant together, and often it will be musical. Not always. Sometimes we're just using our voice. And there are different styles of zikr. Like a Turkish zikr is very active, and a lot of movement and jumping up and down and yelling at God, and it's,
I do that sometimes. Perhaps in a different way, but
yeah, really. But our zikrs are quite quiet and quite internal, and so we'll chant either names of God or expressions that are meaningful, that help us loosen our hold on our ego. And if we can lessen the hold on our ego, we can expand our perspective on what life is, and to help us to get in touch with our ideals and to know the truth of our ideals. And it's simple. It's simple to just chant over and over again something like love, lover, beloved. We do it in Arabic or in Persian. Ishqallah mabud Allah. Ishqallah mabud Allah. And that's love, lover, beloved, all the same. The love, the lover, and the beloved are all in unity with each other.
So the idea of letting go of the ego, is that in kind of the common conception of that as in, oh, I'm going to be less selfish, I'm going to recognize that I'm not the center of everything, and let me look at other people? Or is it in a more metaphysical sense in the way that maybe it's understood in Buddhism, of the doctrine of not self or emptiness, where there is this kind of radical understanding of an elimination of the boundaries of the self, and the radical interconnectedness of things? Is that the sense that there's this, when you say letting go of the ego, is that a radical interconnectedness, or just it helps me be less selfish and recognize humanity in other people and that kind of thing?
We're always moving towards a sense of unity. And as long as we're totally identified with ourself, with our egoic self, that becomes difficult to do. We speak of different stages of the ego,
Okay.
and I can't go into that right now, just because I probably don't have it well enough in my head to explain it. But those are some of our teachings, is or the result of our teachings, and of our practices, is that sense of I am me and I am you, and we are both God. We are part of the God head, all of us, and for us to be able to see that, we talk about polishing our hearts, which if we polish our heart, polish the mirror of the heart. That way, when I see you, I see me. I see.
That's a very common Sufi idea, is polishing the mirror of the heart and then reflecting, your the nature of God, I guess, in your heart. You see this a lot in Sufi poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if we can move to speaking a little bit about the Abode of the Message, the community where I live, it's a great way of getting feedback about that, because when you live in community, live and work in community, you find out really quickly where your buttons are, where your ego is tight, where you can be generous in your heart, where you watch so many people all living this path together and doing this work together, and you see how it manifests at every moment. And so as difficult as it can be, sometimes you see, oh, whoa, I missed the boat on that one. I didn't live up to my ideal, and I'm sorry about that. And then I need to figure out, okay, now what do I do? Do I apologize? Do I resolve to not try not to respond like that again? But you see your limitations, but you see also everybody else's limitations, and you see that you're all in this together, and you're all working towards these ideals, so that you have this opportunity to grow more quickly, really, because you're getting this quick feedback. You can't kind of run away from it, and it's really helpful. And it's not horrible. It can be hard sometimes, but it's not horrible.
Well, that's an endorsement. It's not horrible.
Well, I mean, it could be scary. It could be scary to see, anger, for example, and fear, and those things that jump up and grab us, that keep us from being in that open place of ease and beauty and grace, which are our ideals.
So the Abode is it's a community, and is it of Universal Sufis?
Yes.
And is it like a monastery? Do you have to be initiated in some way into Universal Sufi practice, or do you have people who live there year round and then visitors who come in? Can you just describe the community a little?
Sure.
A little bit?
The Abode of the Message was founded in 1975 by Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan, who was the son of Hazrat Inayat Khan.
Okay.
Who
was the founder of Universal Sufism.
Yes. Yes. And he was the lineage holder at the time, and he wanted to found a community of beautiful people living beautiful lives. And so it was started with this very, very high ideal. And they ended up purchasing the South family of the New Lebanon Shakers.
Okay.
And that's where we are now. We have year-round residents. We have a nicely developed work study program that I oversee, where people can come and live for up to a year and work and study in different ways. Then we have programs, and some of them are Sufi programs, and some of them are rental programs, but they're all in line with us and who we are. Now, people who live at the abode don't have to be initiates.
Okay.
But obviously they need to be in alignment with the principles and beliefs that we hold, these universal truths of unity. So it can look very different from person to person. Currently, the lineage holder, who is the grandson of Hazrat Inayat Khan, his name is Zia Inayat Khan, and he has a title of Pir, so we call him Pir Zia. And you can get to know him better at his website, pirzia.org. That's pirzia.org, where you can see him teaching, or you can go to YouTube and Google him.
And we'll link to that as well.
Great. And so there's a lot of different ways of being at the abode and coming to the abode to stay. We also have a retreat concentration, which, and that's something that Pir Vilayat really developed a lot, was this alchemical retreat process. And we'll be in a space, usually a hut of some sort, and be on silence, but we'll have a guide, and the guide will guide us through this whole process of dissolving the ego, becoming open, receptive, and then bringing in general, we bring in a lot of light practices, so that again, we have this larger perspective, but also working with any issues that are going on in our lives at the time, and try to bring more light into how we see those problems.
By light, do you mean like understanding? Or what do you mean by light?
Well,
light
we have practices that are specifically about light, the divine light, the inner light, that we all have an inner light.
Like a metaphorical light, right? Like a metaphorical or literal light?
Well, I don't think we think of it so much as metaphorical, although probably it's not a lamp. I mean, but
yeah, I mean,
but Shirag, going back to the universal worship, the leaders of the universal worship, that's what Shirag is. It's a lamp. Like the genie lamp. That's a Shirag, and we're light bringers. We bring the light to be seen, to be perceived, but it's again calling on that spirit of guidance and getting support for that inner spirit of guidance. So we call on our inner light, we call on divine light, and there are different forms, there are different names for that. Nur is the inner light, and there are specific words that we use, that we chant, where we're calling on that quality in ourself that we can get in touch with when we stop the buzz of our mind.
Okay. And so is this light understood as divinity in a way? I know, there's in some Sufi texts, they talk about lightness and darkness as being inherent in people and part of creation, and different ratios of light and dark. Is that same kind of thing, this light coming from the divine?
Yes.
That suffuses the world, right?
Right. And back to the universal worship, because there you get a visual. You have what we call the God candle. So on the altar, there'll be a candle in the center, and that is what we light all the other candles from, symbolically bringing that light into the other religions. And so then we'll light a candle for Hinduism, a candle for Buddhism, a candle for Zoroastrian, a candle for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and then one in the center, in front of the God candle, the Spirit of Guidance candle, that's all those known or unknown who've held aloft the light of truth. And so you see laid out on the altar there this light, and it's in all these different forms, but equal in its power and truth.
So let's talk a little bit about how you first came to Universal Sufism. How did you encounter it?
Well, I'd been seeking and not knowing what I was seeking. I knew there was something more meaningful in life than anything I had encountered, but I wasn't sure where to go with it. So I just kept looking. I started with the martial arts, thinking that being in touch with the Eastern philosophy or culture would be helpful. And I did that for a while, and then I got involved at the Peace Pagoda, at the Grafton Peace Pagoda, which is a Japanese Buddhist order. And there's a temple there, and then the stupa. And I was very involved there for a while. But then I still was getting kind of, there's something more, and I don't know what it is yet. And a friend of mine from my Tai Chi class knew that there was this service on Sundays at the Abode. And she asked if I wanted to go. And I was open, so I went. And that was where it really made sense to me that, one doesn't have to choose. One can embrace all these religions in the sense that that they all are expressing a truth, a universal truth, the unity of religious ideals, with the emphasis on ideals, not so much on the religion. And I just kept going back, and then there was a brunch after the service, so I was getting to know people, and I started to see that the people had a quality about them that had a lot of light in it. The people were very light and bright, and I was intrigued by that. And then I found out that actually you didn't have to be a Sufi to live at the Abode, and that there was this work-study program, and that I could go there. So I thought, okay, I'll go for a couple of months and just find out what these Sufis are doing. And here it is, 15 years later. So I was very drawn by the light in the people, which is something hard to kind of express. But I don't know. I think when you see it, you know what it is.
It's like like that famous quote, you know, when you see it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple final questions. One of them, I'm wondering, how do you make sense of, or how do you understand when different religions? So let me back up just a second. So Universal Sufism, it seems to accept the truth of all religions. It embraces different religious paths. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when you have different religions that are in conflict with each other, or they have certain doctrinal differences, like in Christianity, there's recognition of Jesus as Savior. In Judaism, there's not that recognition of Jesus in the same kind of role. Do you understand those differences? How do you make sense of those differences from a Universal Sufi perspective? Are they just different ways to understand a spiritual path, or misguided in some way?
Well, I work with all the religions on a regular basis because I'm always looking for scriptures for my services. And I think if one doesn't look at the doctrine of the religions, one finds the message of divine truth in each one. So accepting that there are prophets in each religion, that there have been these beings that have been inspired and been connected, and that they themselves are all connected to each other. There are no differences when those revealed truths come through. Those are for everyone. And yes, at different times in the world, there's been different needs and different cultural patterns, and so things may end up looking different on the outside. But we focus more on the sameness, the things that are related to each other rather than the differences. And sometimes we can talk about the differences too, but that's not our main focus. Our main focus is how each religion has so much that can inspire us in the different ways, and that by connecting with them, we connect with a broader world. We connect with all the practitioners of those different religions, so that we can be a citizen of the world, and not just a limited being.
Okay, well, I think as just a final wrap-up question, if there was one lesson from Universal Sufism that you think the world needs at its current moment, when so many things seem to be going wrong, what would that be?
Well, I go back to love, harmony, and beauty, that we're made of love. We come from love. We are love, all of us. And if we can see that divine love, that beauty in each other, instead of seeing the differences, see beyond the surface, that every being is made of love, and every being has a heart, and we all have these ideals of wanting to be happy, and wanting our children to be happy, and wanting the world to be a good place. And that sometimes that gets distorted, unfortunately, and that we work towards bringing light to that difficulty. Bring light to understanding that we are truly beings of God.
Well, I can support love and happiness. That is a message I can get behind.
Right, it's pretty universal.
Yeah. Thanks so much for talking. Anyone who wants to find out more about Universal Sufism, they can go to the website of the Abode, which we will link to. And are there any other resources where people can look?
Let's see, Pirzia.org, SufiOrder.org, theabode.org, OmegaPub.org, or maybe that's .com, I'm not sure, but OmegaPub will bring it up, and that's our publishing company that has all these books. And I'm at volunteer at theabode.org if you would be interested in participating in our work study program and coming and living it and learning about it at the Abode.
Oh, great. Well, thanks so much. This was very interesting, a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Bless you.